The first step is to open Codesys. Then it is clicked on New Project. In order to create a new project, it must be selected in categories Ingesys Team, the default template Ingesys IC2 empty project. The project must be named, and it is necessary to select a location. This template contains the default configuration for our devices. The node Ingesys IC2, it is used for different purposes. Connecting to the device in order to log in the application. Configuring the settings of the device. Sending commands to the device such as set an IP, get firmware information, etc. In the final part of the video will be shown how to log in the application and the state of system variables and iOS statuses. Within POS there are defined. One example of default global variable list. One example of a global variable list with useful variables already declared. A folder for the programs with one program example. Within the node application there are defined a folder for the configuration files, library manager module with our default libraries, symbol configuration module already configured. One example of task. The importation of the hardware reference, it is done as follows. Clicking on Empty Project, Import, and hardware reference must be selected. It is shown the hardware configuration of the device. A brief explanation will be done for the following modules. On CPU is shown firmware information. On these modules it is done the iOS configuration, assigning a task to be refreshed and declaring the symbolic names. Before configuring anything, it will be necessary to define the symbolic names that are going to be used in I/O mapping. In this case, they are going to be defined in POS in the global variable list GVL. All symbolic names are defined. Then on I/O device parameters there are configured the digital outputs that are going to be used, modifying the enabled parameter. On I/O device I/O mapping there are declared the symbolic names and it is assigned the task to be refreshed. Always update variables must be configured as enabled too. On status it is shown the module status. It is done the same process for the other iOS. On I/O device parameters is configured the analog inputs that are going to be used, 4 analog inputs in different ranges. In this case, the last 4 analog inputs are disabled. On I/O device I/O mapping, there are declared the symbolic names, and it is assigned the task to be refreshed. Always update variables must be configured as enabled too. On status, it is shown the module status. On I/O device parameters, the last I/O analog outputs are configured in different ranges. On I/O device I/O mapping, there are declared the symbolic names, and it is assigned the task to be refreshed. Always update variables must be configured as enabled too. On status, it is shown the module status. Once everything is configured, the procedure to log in the application into the device is done as follows. First, it is necessary to build the application. A lot of compiler warnings will appear because the GSV attributes are not recognized by CodeSys. If it is needed, they can be hidden, and it is done as follows. It is clicked on Project Settings, Compiler Warnings, and click on C0351. In order to log in the application, first it is needed to be connected with the device. Within Ingesys IC2 Communication Settings, there are 2 ways to be connected with the device. Scan Network and select the device. Or typing directly the IP and pressing Enter. If the circle is green, it means that the connection was successful. Then there are also 2 ways to log in the application. Clicking on this button, or clicking on Online Login. In order to run the application, it must be clicked on this button, or clicking on Debug Start. Once online, it can be visualized the value of the variables and statuses of the iOS. It is shown the values of GSV system variables. If everything is in green color, it means that there are no errors in the modules. On CPU is shown firmware information. The iOS have the following statuses. First I/O status. Second I/O status. Third I/O status.
Inge team, electrifying a sustainable future.